Let me guess, someone told you that time blocking is the secret to getting on top of everything. You sit down, you map your week into neat little color-coded boxes, and you tell yourself, this time I'm going to be disciplined. But here's the truth. Most of the advice out there is written for office jobs. 9 to 5, predictable calendars, no service peaks, no late night finishes, no late night chaos. In hospitality, that version of time blocking will fall apart before you even finish Monday. And when it does, you'll feel guilty, like you're failing at discipline. But you're not failing. The system just wasn't built for the world that you're working in. In this video, I want to show you why the corporate style of time blocking doesn't work in hospitality and how to rebuild it into something flexible, realistic, and actually useful. A version that gives you rhythm instead of guilt, space instead of pressure. Welcome to the Lead Well channel, where we help hospitality leaders protect their well-being, lead with clarity, and build businesses that don't break them. If that sounds like something you'd benefit from, take a second to subscribe and like this video. It helps the channel grow, but more importantly, it means this content can reach more owners, more managers, and more leaders who need it. Because let's be honest, this industry doesn't give us much in the way of support. Sometimes it takes hearing from somebody who's been there to realize you're not failing, you're just carrying more than anyone realizes. I'll be honest with you, I used to fall for that classic time blocking advice. I'd sit down on a Sunday night with my calendar and I'd try to map every single hour of the week. Bright colors everywhere, payroll block here, marketing block there, meetings stacked up neatly. And by the time I got to Wednesday, it had already collapsed. Why? Because that version of time blocking assumes predictability. It assumes the rota won't suddenly need redoing, the supplier won't show up late, the staff member won't call in sick, or service won't overrun. But we all know in hospitality that's not how it goes. Instead, I'll spend my week breaking my own plan, moving things around, dropping important tasks, and instead of feeling organized, I felt worse. I felt guilty, I felt frustrated, like I couldn't even stick to my own schedule. For a while, I thought that meant that I was the problem, that I lacked discipline, that I just needed to try harder. But eventually I realized it wasn't me, it was the system. It wasn't built for this life. The breakthrough came when I stopped trying to copy the corporate version and started building something that actually matched hospitality. Something flexible, something that could bend without breaking, anchored blocks, buffers, reset times, not every hour planned within an inch of its life. That's what actually gave me breathing room. And if you're listening to this thinking, okay, but where's my time really going? What am I even supposed to block? That's exactly what my free business wellness quiz will show you. It gives your personal lead well score across the 4 pillars that I talk about here on this channel, and it highlights your blind spots. Maybe it's energy leaks, maybe it's lack of rhythm, maybe it's carrying too much yourself instead of delegating. The quiz only takes a few minutes. It's free and it'll give you a clear picture of where you are right now as a leader. You'll find the link in the description. Remember, you carry a lot. You deserve the tools and the support to carry it well. So here's what we've covered so far. Why the traditional version of time blocking collapses in hospitality and why it's not your fault if it hasn't worked for you. The problem isn't your discipline, it's the system. In the next part of this video, I'm going to walk you through what a hospitality friendly version looks like. Anchored blocks, buffers, reset times, the simple structure that works with chaos instead of against it. So if the corporate version doesn't work, what does? This is where I rebuilt time blocking for hospitality. Instead of trying to control every hour of every day, I started thinking in terms of anchors, buffers, and resets. These 3 things turned time blocking from a rigid, guilt-inducing system into something that actually gave me breathing room. Anchored blocks. The immovable foundation, anchored blocks are your big rocks. They're the things that don't move, no matter what. In hospitality, that's stuff like service start and end times, payroll deadlines, weekly management meetings, supplier ordering windows, personal non-negotiables like school pickups, therapy sessions, or the gym. These anchors give your week a skeleton. They're the things you actually rely on to happen. And once they're in place, they stop you from drifting. When I first started doing this, it felt strange to add personal anchors alongside business ones. But that was the shift. Before, I treated my personal life before it was optional, something I squeezed in if I happened to have time. Now I protect those anchors first, and the business didn't crumble because of it. In fact, it got stronger. For example, I used to push payroll into the middle of the night. It was stressful, error prone, and it drained me for the next day. When I turned payroll into a fixed anchor on a Monday morning, I started catching mistakes earlier, and it freed up mental space for the rest of the week. Anchors give you clarity. They say, this is when this happens no matter what. Buffers. The breathing room you didn't know you needed. The next piece is buffers. Buffers are the spaces between things, and they matter more than you think. Here's the problem. Most of us stack tasks back to back thinking that's efficient. We finish lunch service, then we immediately sit down for a staff meeting, then we roll into invoices, then head over to dinner service, no pause, no reset, just constant go. And the truth is, transitions drain energy. Shifting from one mode to another takes more out of you than you realize. And when you don't build in buffers, your brain never really catches up. That's why you end up making mistakes, snapping at people, or staring blankly at a spreadsheet. When I started deliberately adding buffers, everything changed. I gave myself 30 minutes after lunch service before I touched admin. I took 15 minutes after a tough team conversation before diving back on the floor. Those little pauses stopped me from carrying stress from one task to the next. And here's the whole part. I didn't lose time by adding buffers. I gained it because when I sat down after that short reset, I was sharper, faster, I made fewer mistakes. Think of buffers as pressure valves. They release the steam before the system explodes. Finally, reset times. These are the tiny deliberate breaks that you build into high pressure days to stop yourself from spiraling. And I don't mean scrolling on your phone in the stock room. I mean real resets that help your nervous system come back online. For me, that's a walk outside, a few minutes of breath work, or making a tea and actually drinking it without doing 3 other things at once. I'll give you an example. There was a time when I was running on pure adrenaline, morning till night. One day, just before dinner service, I felt that familiar tightness in my chest, anxiety creeping in. Instead of pushing through like I usually did, I stepped outside, I leaned against a wall, and I did 5 minutes of slow, guided breathing. When I came back in, my whole system felt calmer, and because I did a reset, I didn't spiral into panic during service. That's what resets do. They don't just give you a break, they stop the day from running away with you. So here's how it all fits together. Start with your anchors. Put the big rocks in first: service, payroll, meetings, non-negotiables. Add buffers around the heavy stuff. Don't go from one high pressure block straight into another. Give yourself space to breathe. Sprinkle in reset times, especially on the days when you know it will be intense. What you end up with isn't a color-coded hour-by-hour calendar. It's a flexible rhythm, a structure that respects the reality of hospitality. Chaos, late nights, curveball, without leaving you burnt out by Thursday. I'll never forget the week I finally tested this properly. But before, my calendar looked like a corporate dream. Everything color-coded, every hour neatly filled, and every day by 11 a.m. the plan was already wrecked. Staff off sick, deliveries late, meetings overrun. I'd spend the week shuffling blocks around like a guilty game of Tetris. By Friday, I felt like a failure. Then I tried the anchors, buffers, resets version. Monday morning, payroll anchored, non-negotiable. Tuesday, mid-morning, leadership block, anchored. Lunch service buffer before invoices. Short reset before dinner service. Did the week run perfectly? Of course not. Service still went sideways, problems still cropped up, but instead of collapsing the whole plan, the structure bent around me, and by Sunday I felt calmer, I felt more in control, less like I was chasing fires. And that's the difference. You're not trying to control the chaos, you're trying to stop the chaos from controlling you. So that's the foundation of time blocking that actually works in hospitality. Anchored blocks, buffers, and reset times. Instead of rigid hours, you're building rhythm. Instead of guilt, you're creating breathing room. In the next section, I'll show you how to decide what actually belongs in those blocks using the Time Audit Tool, and then how to build your week around them using the weekly wellness and operations planner. This is where it gets really practical, taking what we've talked about and putting it into a system that you can start using tomorrow. Spotting what to block with the Time Audit Tool. Now you might be thinking, okay, Trevor, anchors, buffers, resets, I get it, but how do I know what to actually block? That's where the Time Audit Tool comes in. Because if you're anything like me back in the day, you think you know where your hours are going, but you don't. I used to tell myself I was working 70 hours a week on strategy and leadership. But when I actually tracked it, maybe 5 to 10 of those hours were true leadership work. The rest was admin, firefighting, rota fixes, supply runs, answering questions that I thought I delegated. The Time Audit Tool makes it visible. For 5 to 7 days, you jot down what you're doing, how long it takes, and this is the key, how it feels. Because some things don't take much clock time, they just drain you for hours afterwards. Like payroll, it only took me 25 minutes, but mentally it left me flat for about half a day. That's something you need to know because it affects how to build your week. Once you've done the audit, patterns jump out. You'll see the leaks, the duplication, the wasted energy, and you can start to decide what deserves my peak hours and what belongs in the dips. Once you've got your audit, the next step is to translate it into rhythm, and that's where the weekly wellness and operations planner comes in. Here's how to use it. You block the anchors first: payroll, meetings, service hours, personal non-negotiables. These go in first. They're the skeleton of your week. Second, you add peak energy hours. From our last episode, you know when you're sharpest. Protect that time for high value leadership work. Planning, coaching, decision making. Insert the buffers. Build in breathing room around the heavy tasks or the transitions. No more back-to-back marathons. Fourth, you want to sprinkle in reset times. 10 minutes before service, 15 minutes after a tough meeting, a proper half day midweek to catch your breath. 5. Fill in admin and low value tasks. Everything else goes into your natural dips. Emails in the afternoon slump, ordering at the end of the day. The planner keeps you honest. It stops you from slipping back into I'll do it all whenever I can mode. And it gives you a weekly rhythm that bends with hospitality instead of breaking against it. Now, if you'd like the exact documents that I'm talking about that I use with my clients, I can send them to you for free. All you need to do is comment the word audit below and I'll get it to you. They're simple sheets, but I promise once you fill them out, you'll see your time in a completely different way. And once they're paired together, it's like switching on a light. Let's zoom out for a second. Most hospitality leaders are running flat out day after day thinking the only answer is more hours, but time blocking done the hospitality way shows you that it's not about more, it's about different. When you block your week around anchors, buffers, resets and energy, you're not just managing time, you're managing yourself, your clarity, your ability to lead, your presence with your team. And the payoff is huge. You make better decisions because you're not making them on empty. You stop snapping at people because you're not carrying stress from one block into the next. You rebuild confidence because instead of drifting, you're steering. That's the real power of time blocking. Not a color-coded calendar, a life and a business that work together instead of pulling you apart. So here's what we've covered in this video. Why the corporate model of time blocking collapses in hospitality, how anchors, buffers and resets create a flexible rhythm instead of a rigid control, how the Time Audit Tool shows you where your hours are really going, and how the weekly wellness and operations planner helps you build a week around energy, not just chaos. Remember, if you want to see where your own blind spots are, take the free business and wellness quiz. It gives you a personal lead well score and it highlights the areas where you're strong and where you're carrying too much. The link's in the description. Remember, you matter too. Don't forget that.